paper, paints, and a brush. That's what's happening here. But first I want to show you the inspiration for this session. It's from the book Watercolor, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner. Hi, I'm Irene, and I'm not a complete beginner. Watercolor painting is one of my hobbies, but in an effort to improve my skills, I turned to this book. Did it write itself? No. It's by artist and instructor Paul Clark. His name is way down there on the bottom. Maybe he should have a word with his publisher. Then again, he might just be really modest. Producer Mike purchased this book because we're both fans of Paul's YouTube channel, where he generously shares his knowledge and techniques. After scanning through the pages, I settled on an exercise that looked interesting, but not intimidating. Plus, those colors just scream spring and summer, right? So I pulled out one of my watercolor sketchbooks, the one with 100% cotton rag paper from SHIZEN. The fun thing about this paper is its extremely bumpy texture. I haven't encountered anything else like it. This is SHIZEN's version of rough texture, but I believe they also offer a smooth option. Smooth for them, anyway. It's been a while since I used this one, so there was a quick flip through of the earlier pages. Then I found a blank page and went about creating a loose abstract floral piece. It started out similar to Paul's exercise, but then it sort of went off in its own direction. So yeah, it ended up as something different, really. And that's okay. There's no paint police here to haul me away for not following the assignment. For much of this piece, I used a Princeton Neptune No. 12 round brush. The synthetic squirrel hairs are very soft and thirsty. It's a good match, I think, for this paper. The first step was laying down some random spots of water. After that, I started placing colors. There were only 4, a red, a yellow, a blue, and Payne's gray. As you watch the progression of this piece, I'm going to tell you about the nice day I had. So this channel has surpassed the 3-year mark. That happened back in March. And to celebrate that, producer Mike and I had dinner at the Old Spaghetti Factory. They have locations around the country, so you may be familiar with the name. I hadn't been there in probably a couple of decades, but I always liked their decor of Victorian-style furniture and fixtures. I had spinach and meat tortellini, which was yummy, and producer Mike had garlic mizithra, which was absolutely delicious. Seriously, throughout the meal, I took several bites from his plate of spaghetti, mizithra cheese, brown butter, mushrooms, and bacon. Bacon, I tell you. And to wash it down, we shared a half carafe of sangria. But that's not the end of the story. We also stopped at the Artist and Craftsman Supply to ogle art stuff. We only bought a couple of things, but since a small package arrived that same day, I did take some footage to show all of the items. That will be a future video. During the painting process, I tried to keep the palette in frame as much as possible without obscuring the action. I just think it's interesting to see what all happens there, how the colors look on the smooth ceramic surface, and how they move and blend together. If you can, leave a note with your opinion on the matter. Show the palette action or don't show the palette action. Sure, I'm all for comments such as, "Oh, Irene, everything you do is perfect." But on the off chance this stuff interests nobody other than myself, let me know, because I don't want to bore people with mundanities and repetition. That's what voiceovers are for. Thankfully, those can be muted as needed. The colors were looking pretty intense for a while, but drying shift dulled that down, at least with the initial layer. Subsequent layers retained more of their vibrancy. Although this exercise from the book wasn't followed to a T, it acted as a prompt to get the art ball rolling. And to me, that's the important thing, because in many cases, just starting a project is the biggest challenge. As long as you pick up a brush and go at it, you've crossed that hurdle. For example, you might tell yourself, I don't have the right colors, so I can't do it. Well, that's poppycock. I didn't either, so I just chose the colors I wanted to use, and they worked fine. Another block might be indecision over which paper and brush to use. In my case, I wanted to use this paper because I think its texture works well for loose styles. From there, a fat, thirsty brush made sense, so I selected the Princeton Neptune No. 12 round. This paper is only 8 inches square, but if it were larger, I might have gone with my Neptune No. 4 quill instead. Yes, the No. 4 quill is bigger than the No. 12 round. Just trust me on that. And lest you think I go around saying poppycock all willy-nilly, let me tell you, I pulled that out especially for you. You know, for emphasis. Full disclosure, I do use willy-nilly regularly, as should everyone. By the way, I really like the green mix I came up with, but on the page I dropped in dabs of straight yellow and blue for added interest. My rigger brush hasn't gotten a lot of use, but this seemed like the perfect place to incorporate some thin, wispy strokes. I understand that type of tool is also called a liner or a script brush. On the subject of Italian food, I have a fondness for a place called Mama Cosa's in Anaheim, California. It's a traditional Italian restaurant that's been around since the 1960s. I've only been there once, decades ago, and I don't even recall what I ordered, really, but I do remember it was my very first experience with anisette. Anisette is an anise-flavored liqueur. For those who are unfamiliar, the flavor of anise is similar to licorice. The flavor of licorice is one I've never had a taste for, so it was quite a surprise to encounter it in an otherwise innocuous-looking cordial glass. But I turned my grimace into a smile and said, "Yum!" Because that's what you do when your dining companions order a special treat for you, especially when those dining companions are also your employers. Yes, this was during a business-related trip to attend a multi-day hobby industry trade show. And I was treated very well with dinners out, Krispy Kreme donuts, and even an entire day at Disneyland. Yeah, I experienced a lot of firsts during that time, and I still feel grateful for those opportunities. Which is why choking down that shot of anisette is such a cherished memory. I went in rather heavy with the abstract blossoms. In hindsight, I'd leave them that way, but at the time, they struck me as glaringly out of place, so I lifted some of the pigment with a tissue. But later on, I added loose inkwork with a black Faber-Castell brush pen. On the one hand, you could think, man, this art stuff is rife with hard choices. On the other hand, you could think, man, this art stuff is full of creative possibilities. I love a good lasagna. In fact, way back, that was the very first thing I asked producer Mike to make for me. To say I was thrilled to discover he was a better cook than me is putting it lightly. In my younger days, I used to make a spinach lasagna complete with homemade bechamel sauce. It was one of my go-to recipes, along with paprika pork and sauerkraut, Hungarian mushroom soup, and tater tot casserole. But I'm under no delusions that I was particularly skilled at cooking. In fact, I lost a lot of my old recipe cards long ago. Thank goodness for Pinterest, right? Okay, so I've been talking a lot about Italian food because there are numerous joys to be found there. If I squint just a bit, this piece sort of looks like crushed tomatoes and spinach leaves. The thing is, Italian isn't even my favorite cuisine, but that's a story for another time. Using a Princeton snap brush, I added a fine spattering of red and blue by flicking the bristles with a finger. Since the snap bristles are springier, compared to the Neptunes, I think they do a better job of spraying paint when using that technique. Just now, I nearly said whilst instead of when, which would have sounded ridiculous. And if you think we do ridiculous here, well, poppycock. Just wanted to share the wonderful things happening on the surface of the palette there. And the eagle-eyed may notice a whole lot of spatter on my tabletop. That technique worked a little too well. So, to sum up, I was inspired by an exercise found in Paul Clark's watercolor book, and I took it in a different direction. This project wasn't intended as a dismissal of art books or art teachers. I happen to have a high regard for those things in general, and for Paul Clark in particular. And even though I'm not big on classrooms or tutorials, they have enormous value for many people. I just think that when you're practicing and experimenting on your own, there's plenty of room for spontaneity. I'm not doing this art stuff to not have fun. Why is this SHIZEN rough sketchbook not used more here at Inkworks? The texture is a bit much for what I normally do. In my opinion, it's fantastic for loose painting, but far from ideal for tighter, detailed work. Still, I have a blast with it every time I pull it out, and that green cover with satiny ribbon ties, it's so pretty. A shout out to everyone who's been tapping those like, subscribe, and share buttons, and of course for all of the lovely comments. Each one is a thrill to see. If you aren't one of those people and you've watched this video all the way here, come on, seriously? It's painless, I promise. I'm happy to share this arting exercise with you, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Were there a lot of excuses for not following directions? Perhaps, but remember, just like there's not only one type of cuisine, there's not only one way to art. Plus, I'm open to this experience being a pivotal step on the journey to fully embracing loose watercolor florals. As the late, great Judy Tenuta used to say, it could happen. Until next time, eat your spinach tortellini, use your painting supplies, and stay artsy, my friends.